All right, guys, it's been just over a week since free agency started, and my God, has it been a little bit lackluster and quite boring. So, what does that mean? It means it's time to rank every team's free agency and off season so far. So yeah, I mean, what else is there to do when there's nothing going on in free agency? So Jaden, yeah, let's get straight into it with the Anaheim Ducks.
Yeah, Anaheim Ducks, they're off season so far, and I don't know, lackluster, not great, not overly crazy. I've got it in C. We do,
Yeah, yeah. See, it's
and
not, it's nothing special.
yeah, look, they go get Granlund. They obviously get a boy that's now gone to Disney World, and in the in the draft,
In the draft.
but obviously they trade Zegras, and which is a good thing as well. But I don't know, it's still a little bit lackluster as to what I would want for the Ducks, but I still think they're building towards good things.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think they had to do much. So again, C is probably a pass mark.
Yeah, and they finally get
I
rid
know
of
it's
Gibson, which we
yeah,
didn't touch on. Yeah, which
no, but
which I
yeah,
guess you can almost put him S tier just for finally doing it.
finally doing the right thing and moving him on. Yeah, no, I agree. All right, let's move on to the Boston Bruins. Hey, and I mean, what do you say? They didn't really do anything, and you've got one of the best players in the league in Pasternak, and I think they're not going to be getting any better this season. So for me, it's D tier.
Yeah, D tier.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I don't think
look,
there's much more to say. It was shocking.
yeah, they're win now mode. They're obvious, like I say win now mode just because you got Pasta. Like you've got
Yeah,
Pasta, I feel like you should be win now mode. Obviously, you got Swayman at the back lines there as well, and McAvoy and whatnot on D. And I just don't feel like it was enough to warrant. They're kind of in no man's land at the moment.
mm. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, for me, it's got to be D. It wasn't great.
Yep. Alrighty. On to Buffalo. Look, we're just rounding out the bottom of this in the D case as well. And
Oh,
yeah, very lackluster. Obviously, JJ Paterka gone. And look, people not wanting to hang around Buffalo just seems to be the constant thing for this organization
yeah.
over the years. And it's kind of sad to see because I actually don't mind Buffalo as an actual team. And
No, no.
yeah, in regards to signings, look, there was a lot of signings in regards to extensions and two ways and whatnot, but big signings, probably. Look, I like the player, Ryan McLeod. 5 mil
Yep.
is probably a bit rich, but you got to pay that to get the players there.
Yep.
And yeah, so nothing overly great, and probably more losses than gains.
Yeah, yeah. Look, I hope for Buffalo's sake it improves. But at the moment, yeah, it's not looking ideal for these guys. That's for sure. Feel for you, Buffalo fans. All
Yeah,
right, let's move on to the Calgary Flames. Look, nothing major from the Flames. They didn't do a huge amount. But some can argue that that's a good thing that they didn't go too stupid. They kind of need a big retool slash rebuild in a way. So for me, it, nothing special, but it's not terrible. I got to give them a C.
yeah, in C tier as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you pretty much summed it up. Like there's other moves they could have made and stuff, but there's no great free agency signings. I can't remember if they made any really big trades. So
No.
it's yeah, like they pretty much made what, one trade? It was a
I don't. I don't.
seven for a seventh. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Basically nothing.
so if that
It,
seventh turns out to be something, that's great. But I don't think they didn't panic.
no.
Which I think
No.
is a key thing as well. So that's why it's not a D, it's a C. Yeah.
Yeah. To me, it's a passing grade. Like
Yeah.
you it's what you sort of expect and hope. I mean, some people might go, "Oh, that should be an A because they didn't stuff up," but for me, it's like you're not getting an A for just doing the bare minimum and not stuffing up. Like you didn't do anything too crazy. You get a C.
Hmm.
All right, on to the Canes.
Under the Canes. Finally going up higher than C, we have in B tier
Mm,
for the Canes. Obviously, losing Brent Burns is a big loss, but
mhm.
they do shore it up a little bit. So it's not the worst of things. They still get Keandre Miller. Did
Yep.
have did have to pay a little bit, but they're win now mode, so obviously you're going for it. But
Yeah.
you basically give up those picks for replacing Brent Burns, which like you replace him, but it doesn't really push you into an A or S tier. And I don't know if the moves they made this offseason is really going to get them over the line again.
Yeah. Like I like Stankoven's re-signing and the value of it. I like the signing of Nikolai Ehlers. But they don't really address their goaltending situation. And
Yeah,
as good as Anderson can be, he hasn't played over 20 games in 4 seasons or whatever it is. So yeah, that's probably where they struggle and move back a little bit, but they address their forward pack, so like that's got to be something, right?
yeah, yeah. It's an interesting one. We'll see if it works out, if it actually comes to fruition, the way they play their
Yeah.
game.
Yeah, exactly. All right, on to the Chicago Blackhawks. This one for me is a weird one because we've heard a lot about, them wanting to put some, veteran presence and some decent players around Connor Bedard, to try and help him out. And well, they didn't really do that. They picked up Burakovsky, which, isn't a terrible. It's not a terrible pickup. Burakovsky is great. Obviously, won the cup with Colorado, um, but that's really all they did. Um, they've got a lot of cap space. They didn't have any major signings. Um, yeah, so like you look at this and go, they're not getting any better going into next season. So
Yeah,
yeah, I don't know.
D
And
tier,
y-
pretty much.
yeah. I mean, if Connor Bedard signs a really good long term contract with them, you might say, oh, well, that might get him up into to C or B or A. But yeah, look, it's got to be D.
Mm.
Yeah.
Alrighty, Colorado Avalanche, one of the cup contending teams, pretty much the one of the two that we've talked about so far, and our first top rank in the S tier.
Mm.
And look, I think it's pure. I rate it S tier purely because the Brent Burns signing. I think that's the type
Yeah.
of trade that, well, signing not trade, but you make to win a cup, 1 mil for a defender
Hmm.
like that.
Hmm.
And they didn't lose overly too great of depth like Miles Wood and whatnot. But Miles Wood is easily replaceable. Not his speed, but
Mm.
he also doesn't utilize that speed to his best capabilities.
No.
But S tier, I think that type of signing gets them further in
Yep.
the playoffs this year, and maybe even to the cup final.
And the sacrifice of Miles Wood and Charlie Coyle allowed them to re-sign Brock Nelson, which has been the big need of theirs. Is that
Second,
center
well,
depth?
they've been looking for that for
Yep.
years. They keep getting him, and
Mhm.
then they trade him out, and they get him, and they trade him out.
Exactly, and yeah, that allowed, and they didn't really give up too much to get him. They haven't really changed anything except for they've improved their depth in defense, and yeah, they really geared themselves up for another strong push this year. Um, all right, on to Columbus Blue Jackets. Uh, this is it's not a it's to me they've had a good year, a good off season in terms of they haven't done what Nashville did and gone, oh, we could, we looked good last year. Let's go and spend $1 billion in free agency. Um, they've added a couple of depth players. Obviously Charlie Coyle, Miles Wood. They've re-signed Provorov. Done a couple of just they've done what they needed to do, I think, and they haven't sort of handcuff themselves going forwards. They've still got a lot of cap space available. Um, but yeah, they haven't really done anything too crazy. So for me, it's a B.
B, yeah, slide them
Yep.
up into B tier. There we go. Alrighty, and like you said, a bit in the cap space at 15 mil there.
Yeah.
Alrighty, on to Dallas. I'll just throw them straight into B as well, alongside them. Like they re-sign some of their older guys on smaller contracts, like Jamie Benn, and look, they've added what they need to in a sense. Like they haven't done nothing too crazy. Like facts are like it's nothing too overwhelming. But
And he was re-signed.
yeah,
Oh, sorry, no,
it
he
was,
left and they've re-signed him.
yeah, but they kept him. Yeah. But that
Yeah,
was one of the biggest, the more expensive signings they did. They went the free
yeah,
agency, but yeah, look, there's not too much to change with that team. We know they're already built to try and win the cup.
mhm,
My biggest concern was like the whole coaching thing, and that's more where you could probably put them to S tier or D tier on how they handle that.
yep,
All
yeah.
right, on to
All right.
Detroit. I'll hand it over to
Detroit,
you.
yeah. Yeah. This one, look, to me, straight off the bat, and I know a lot of people are going to be like, "Oh, it's not a massive thing," but to Detroit, I think it is. And they finally got a goaltender, a good goaltender. They've traded for 50 million goaltenders, and for the last 3 years or whatever it's been, but they finally got a true number one goaltender in John Gibson, and to me, that puts them straight into A tier. Just that alone. Um, I've got him in A tier.
Yeah, like one of the few teams that have addressed something that they needed, like
Yep.
Colorado did with the second line center, that depth veteran, and then Detroit go and gets the goaltender that they've been wanting for years. So look, that's why they get A. I still think they could have done a couple of other things to rework to make them more competitive in the playoffs,
hmm
or getting there, and that's why I didn't have them at S tier, but going A tier.
But they also got some depth signings, which I think they really need because they
Yes.
do have a lot of decent, probably top prospects. And they've got so many young players coming through as well. But they just needed to add that depth and probably some veteran presence, which Van Riemsdyk coming through does. Mason Appleton's a good pickup as well. So yeah, to
Yeah,
me,
I like the
I
apple.
like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alrighty. On to the Oilers. I don't know. Maybe controversial, maybe not. We'll see. D tier.
Yeah, I mean, what did they do?
Yeah, like they move Kane away,
Mm,
but their team doesn't really get better in a sense for next year.
mm.
To go at it again and try and win that cup, and that's what worries me with this. Obviously, they haven't sorted the goaltending situation if they plan to or not. Um, and yeah, signing Evan Bouchard for that cap with only 4 years, I think's
Yeah,
horrible, and that's
it's a
why.
massive overpay.
Oh
Massive.
yeah, I reckon he's more of an 8 mil defend. I
hmm
say defender. He's a forward.
Yes.
He's like Carlson, but
Glorified winger. Yep.
yeah, glorified winger. So yeah, I didn't like. I liked how they got rid of Kane, but I didn't like the Bouchard signing. I don't think the team's any better going forward, and I
They
can't
haven't
see.
addressed their goaltending.
And they haven't addressed the goaltending. They really haven't addressed the defense. They just paid someone, and look, yeah. I worry. I worry for him.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, to me, it's either the defense was an issue or the goaltending was an issue, and they didn't address either. There's been no changes. They just
Yeah.
gave someone who's on that defense even more money.
And every
So
time people talk
yeah,
about him, it's all about his points and stuff, and it's like
yeah,
he's a defender.
not his
Like
defensive game.
we need
Yeah.
we need to talk about defense.
It's exactly. So, I mean, they're still rumored to be looking at potentially getting a goaltender. So that might
Yep.
change. And I tell you right now, if they get a goaltender, that takes them probably from D to a B immediately.
Yeah.
Because they need to address this. But yeah, at the moment, I agree with you. It's got to be a D. All right, on to Florida Panthers. I mean, I don't even need to say anything. It's just straight into an S tier. I don't understand how you win the cup and remain as strong as they are. Like
Yeah. It's kind of what
they've
Tampa
not,
was doing through the years. Yeah.
yeah, but they've not gotten worse. Like, but you can say with Tampa, each year you saw them lose a little piece
Yeah,
of
yeah.
what they
They
were.
lost little pieces, and then but they managed to go out and get depth
and
pieces that
get
overperformed in a sense. But
exactly.
Florida is the
What
same.
Florida kept everyone. They
Mm.
re-signed. They re-signed uh,
Bennett,
Bennett
Marchand.
to 8 by 8, which everyone was saying 10, 11, which I thought was ridiculous, but still, Marchand to a pretty decent deal at 5.25, and Ekblad at 6.1. Like, yeah, so just straight off the bat, it's S. You can't. I don't think anyone can argue with that.
Yeah. Alrighty, on to the Kings. This is an interesting one, really.
Mhm.
You could have him in A, S. You could have him C, D. Got him in C. It's
Sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe shit.
I some, why not have both? um, yeah. So I think they did really good on regards to free agent signings. Maybe overpaid on like the Cody CC um signing, but I like the type of players they got.
Hmm.
Obviously, the issue is the whole coaching thing, and then losing.
Yeah,
Was it Spence? Is it?
Jordan
Yeah,
Spence. Yeah.
Spence.
So that's
So,
good.
and that was my big issue. I honestly have him in D just for not addressing the coaching,
Hmm.
or at least coming out and saying like going to him and going, you know, you never do this
Yeah.
again. Especially on the parking the bus
Yeah.
situation. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's more of a coaching C in regards to
Yeah.
this one, and yeah,
Oh, I feel like, Jordan Spence and the coaching put him in D. The fact that they've addressed a good backup goaltender in Forsberg, they've addressed some depth pieces in their signings that they got. They also picked up Corey Perry, which guarantees them a Stanley Cup berth,
yep.
albeit they'll lose. Um,
Now he's gonna break
so
it.
I feel like, yeah, I feel like that pushes him into C tier. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't a great start, that's for sure, losing Jordan Spence the way they did. Obviously not firing their coach or, just.
Yeah, without the coaching things and Jordan Spence, it's probably like a B or an A. That's
Hmm.
that's how much I put
Yeah,
it down.
I don't hate these signings. Like you said, Cody Cece might be a little bit overpaid, but the rest of it's pretty good and pretty solid. They're all relatively short term as well. So yeah, not horrible, but what they did with, yeah, coaching and that, shocking. All right, Minnesota Wild.
And
Oh,
D. No.
yeah,
Just
no,
cut to the
ser-
chase.
seriously, just cut to the chase. This is the first year that they've had money. They got their 14 million back, and they have done nothing with it. Now, I get that the Rossi situation's probably handcuffed them a little bit. Um, but at the moment, with what they've done, considering they finally have cap space to do something, it's a bit disappointing. If
Yep.
I'm being honest with you, they pick up Vladimir Tarasenko, which I don't mind. But
Good
that's
signing.
really it.
But that's it.
It's
Like
yeah,
you
it's a
said.
it's a
Yeah.
good trade, but everything that they've done nothing else. Um, as we said with the Oilers, this all could change if, depending on what happens with Marco Rossi. Do they trade him and bring in two or three key pieces? Do they sign him and then maybe go out and do another trade for something else, considering the cap space they've got? But at the moment, it's very lackluster for Minnesota,
Yep. Yeah.
especially when you're trying to convince Kirill Kaprizov to stay and resign.
Yeah. Yeah. I was very lackluster. I feel like they could have been probably a powerhouse if they made the right moves in the off season, but we'll have to wait and see what
Yeah,
they do with Rossi. Uh, moving on to the Montreal Canadiens. Going up the ladder, we're going to A. And
yeah.
I don't know. What do you reckon of this one? Do you reckon it's worthy of an A, or is it? Did they make the right moves, or not making moves was the key part?
Well, I think not overdoing it was the big part. Like, they've obviously still got the $8 million in cap space because once Carey Price goes to LTIR,
Yeah.
but they pick up Noah Dobson, which is exactly what they need, right? Like,
Yes.
their defense has been an issue. They have a good young sort of core there. Lane Hudson coming through as well. You add Noah Dobson to this core in that top 4D. Like, it just it just pushes him to the next level. Like Montembeau is not a terrible like he's a serviceable goaltender. Jacob Dove's reasonably good backup. See how he goes this season. He wasn't terrible. When he played, he put up some good numbers. So probably didn't really need to do too much there. We know their forward pack and what it can do, and if you can get a healthy Kirby Dack. So they didn't need to do too
No,
much.
this team's been
And
slowly
yeah,
getting better and better over the last like 5 years, something like that. Just
hmm
slowly adding, and yeah, just another like slow little add, which is gonna just propel them a little bit further forward, which is great.
yeah, no, I like it.
All right,
All
Nashville
right.
Predators. I feel like this is more of a like, what are you doing? Like, where are you at? What are you trying to
hmm
achieve? And I've got
Yep.
them in D tier because it's kind of a question of like, what are you trying to do?
It's
And
called PTSD.
PTSD. Like,
They're burnt from last year going too hard.
yeah, like, yeah, you look at their roster and it's filling out all right, but I feel like they should be making a few more moves to really round out that lineup, and they really didn't. And look, they get Eric Hawler. It's a good depth piece in regards to that. He can take face-offs and whatnot. We know that. But
hmm
look, you got basically like what, 1 year to go for it because of how old some of their players are getting.
Yeah,
And
I mean, Yossi's getting older. Stamkos is 35. Marchessault's 34. O'Reilly's 34.
yeah,
They just picked up Eric Hawler, who's 34. Like this isn't a young team, but to me, their offseason so far has shown that they're not going to throw in the towel, which I agree with, but it also doesn't scream to me like, yeah, we're going as hard as we can. I mean, obviously, 11 million in cap space, you can't just spend that if you've got nothing to spend it on. So if they can't make any deals, then that obviously makes sense. But yeah, I feel like they're still missing something. Like I don't feel like this team is just going to miraculously turn it around and be a top three in the Central.
yeah.
Um,
No, I just think that they've been doing two things. Like they've been adding draft picks, like not first rounders, but seconds and thirds and whatnot. But then also trying to win it, and it's
mhm.
kind of like in between. Um,
You just don't know where they are.
and like I understand like you got to prepare for the rebuild, but it's also at the point where like, well, if you were going for it, you should go for it.
Yeah,
So
you got to make a decision, right?
yeah, so yeah, a
Make
little
that
bit
call.
flip floppy in regards to
Mhm.
that. All right, New
Yep,
Jersey
100%.
Devils,
All
off to
right.
you.
New Jersey Devils. Look, lackluster. I just don't think that they really address the things that they need. Now, I love the pickup of Dadanov, but they haven't addressed their needs in a top six winger and a third line center. So for me, it's the C. Um, I like it, honestly. If they didn't get Dadanov, and a couple of depth pieces, re-signed Cody Glass, albeit and Jake Allen, which is I think Jake Allen's a huge signing, especially for that price. But if they didn't make those sign, they could very well have been in D. Um, Now they might not be finished. Um,
Mm. Yeah, like a
you
lot
know,
of these
there's
teams, they're probably not finished. Well, some of them aren't,
exactly. So
but
if they go and get a top six winger or a third line center, you probably could put them up in B or A, or if they get both, you could probably even argue an S. But at the moment, they just haven't addressed their
no.
two biggest needs.
No, the
Um,
quicker, simple way to address it is like they had three people to get rid of. That Hauler, Palat, Hamilton. They got rid of the cheapest one.
yeah,
So far. So that's why it's so low. Is that Hamilton and Palat needed to be moved? Obviously, some sort of trade with Quinn Hughes. If Vancouver were open to that as well. But nothing has eventuated. But I guess we'll move on to the New York Islanders. And
yeah,
I thought I
yeah.
was like one second into reviewing him, and I had him in S tier.
It didn't take long, did it? It didn't take long.
It's purely because of like the draft. I don't even think
Yeah.
they needed to do anything trades or signing wise. I think that
hmm
the draft has just made them like fast
Yeah.
tracked everything that they're doing. And look, they made some decent signings as well. You know, like Jonathan
Mhm.
Druin. So pretty damn good, and I like it, and I love the kid they picked up too. I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
Even though I
The
wasn't a
Schaefer. Yeah.
yeah, I'm a big fan of Schaefer. So
Yeah.
really, really good. S tier all the way. Uh,
The thing for me, a big one for me is they I know they won the first overall, which sort of helps them, but they jumped on that and said, "Okay, this is the direction we're going to go." You know, they didn't sit there with Noah Dobson and go, "Oh, but we don't want to give him up." No, they went, "Do you know what? That's fine. We got the first overall pick. We can do a quick sort of rebuild and we can go down the rebuild path, but speed it up if we move you on, get some first round picks in, which they got some great first round picks for him, but they had a plan and they stuck to it, which is exactly what you want to see from this Islanders team. And yeah, look, I rate it. I rate exactly what they've done. Um, and yeah, I hope we see more of it.
Alrighty.
All right, on to the
Rangers.
Rags, the good old Rangers. Hey, yeah, look, I you could argue, obviously getting rid of Kreider, losing Keandre Miller, not great, doesn't look great, but the return they got for Miller and then obviously signing Gavrikov, they almost end up ahead. So yeah, for me, I've got him in A tier.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little bit like interesting team build wise. Like
Mhm.
they're probably like 1 year left of going for it because of how Zabinajad's been regressing
Mhm.
and whatnot. And it's look, they get good assets in return for Miller.
Yeah.
Basically replacing Miller with Gavrikov for free, and then getting the picks.
Yeah.
So they kind of did good in that regard and got value, which is
Mhm.
what you need to make further trades down the line. I think it,
Yeah.
is it enough to then help that D in front of Shesterkin? We'll have to wait and see because Shesterkin's not playing bad. He just received the most shots against because that D was just not good enough in front of him.
Yeah, and
And
Gavrikov is obviously a bit more of a defensive defender than
yeah,
Miller was.
yeah.
Um,
So I could
but
see this team doing great because of some of the names on the roster,
Mhm.
but it really is dependent on their age now because the top three forwards paid are all mid, like not mid but low 30s,
Mhm.
and then that is my issue with them. So that's why it's not an S, but because they made a lot of good value, it's an A.
Yeah. I don't think this team's gotten worse from when they were making conference finals. That's just the
Mm,
way I'll put it. Um, so yeah, it's going to just come down to whether or not last year was just a blip and they had a bad season, or if the age has caught up with these guys and this is going to like nothing they do is going to fix this. So I personally think they'll have a bounce back season, but we'll just have to wait and see.
All right, on to Ottawa. I'll just throw them straight into the A tier as well. And look, one of those teams, kind of like Montreal in a sense, just adding little pieces here and there, like not having to overreact to anything and
Mhm.
keeping the team. I really like the Giroux re-signing. That's why I have him in A tier, is because they kept him, and for that amount, that was one of the big key pieces for me for Ottawa. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the Jordan Spence deal was fantastic.
Yes.
They really brought in just an extra depth piece to help that defense out. And I think Spence will be fantastic for them in that sense. Claude Giroux at 2 million is phenomenal. Zetterland at 4.2. I know he didn't perform overly that great in his little stint for Ottawa, but he is a fantastic player and a great goal scorer. Um, but they didn't have to do much. This is a young team that's sort of getting into that prime age of that mid 20s sort of bracket with their core. So I like this. I agree with you completely. It's an A.
Yeah. All right. Your shot on Philadelphia.
Philadelphia Flyers. I mean, look, picking up Trevor Zegras when your names are the Broad Street Bullies. I don't really know that that fits,
Well,
and I feel
that's good. It's good for the future. Yeah.
yeah, I feel like that alone, I almost want to give him a D for it. Um, I just don't know what direction that sends this team in, to be honest with you. Like, uh, they get rid of Torts, obviously, but Tockett's not exactly a soft coach either.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't know how that's going to work with Zegras. Um,
yeah, I
I
know
don't.
he's with his good friend Drysdale, but
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Zegras. I think he's a little bit of a up himself type of character, and he's not the type of character you want in a locker room. Um, so
yeah,
probably
and
would
I
have
don't.
I probably would have had a C if it wasn't for getting Zegras. I think it's more of a detriment than an add, personally.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think Zegras on a different team that's a bit flashy. I mean, maybe that's a good thing, but I mean, also it could be the Flyers trying to change their identity a little bit. But you look at some of the players that they've got, and even Mishkov, like he's still a bit of a ball. Like I know he's really talented and all the rest of it, but he can throw his body. Um, I just don't see how Zegras really fits into that lineup. But who knows? Might be proven wrong.
Yeah. Alrighty, on to the Pittsburgh Penguins, keeping the trend going in the D rank. Just didn't really do anything. For a team that really only has 1 year left to really go for it. Like, really?
Yep.
And they really didn't do anything. I know you got to build for that rebuild that you know is coming,
hmm
but I still would have liked to see going harder for it just for 1 year. Um,
All I can say is if you're going to do a rebuild, for every single person in the NHL, like fans, everyone, please, for the love of God, trade Sidney Crosby.
I'd
I
love
can't
for him to
personally.
stay as a one-man club,
I
but yes,
I know, I can't physically see him anywhere else. But
it's like the Brodor trade. That's
you're wasting such a talent. Like I need to see Crosby in the playoffs one more time at least before he retires. Like please give us that.
yeah.
If you're not going to Dubas, if you're not going to create a contending team, trade Crosby, please.
To the Avs, I would love to see him play with McKinnon.
Oh,
Um,
that'd be phenomenal.
all right, on to San Jose. This is probably a surprising one in regards to like what they did in regards to the ranking on this. I have them in A.
Yeah, I kind of like their off season. I
Hmm.
agree with you on that. They didn't do anything too stupid. They signed Eklund to the bridge deal, which is probably I actually put them down a few points for
Yeah,
that because I
it's
would have
why it's not
rather to see it.
S tier. It was like almost B
Yeah,
tier because of that. I would have liked to see a 7-8 year deal with that one. Yeah.
exactly. But they bring in veteran presence in terms of Dmitry Orlov and John Klingberg. You can question the Klingberg deal, but it's not long term. It's you can deal with that, and it does give you a veteran presence. But yeah, overall, I think they did exactly what they needed to do. They didn't panic. They didn't go out and try and throw money at everything. They're sticking to a plan.
Yep.
They've got their cap space that they know where they're going to spend it. They've got so many young and talented players coming through this lineup in terms of prospects. Um, yeah, like I like what they're doing. They're sticking to the plan. They're not trying to become cup contenders overnight. They're
Mm.
rebuilding and rebuilding properly.
And they got a ton of cap space, so they're going to probably be eating contracts come trade deadline and getting
Yep.
good assets from that. So great asset management build up, and
hmm
honestly, for the future, this team's going to be probably very scary.
Yeah,
Um,
I give it 2 to 3 years, and they're gonna be
yeah, depending what they do in
yeah
this trade deadline and next offseason, yeah. All
yeah
right, on to
100%.
the Seattle Kraken, another interesting team. Got them in C tier. and I'm
Yep.
just not really sure the direction they're going either. Like, what are your thoughts? Like, what they did, like they didn't really
But
add too much, like a Lindgren and a Matt Murray.
yeah. Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, I mean, it's hard. Like they lose Burakovsky, which is huge, but they bring in Mason Marchment, so they probably level out on that, that level. They haven't addressed their goaltending situation. Joey Decord is okay, but Philip Grubauer is unplayable.
it's too
That
much money.
contract,
Too much money for those goaltenders.
yeah, well, you got $10.9 million and in goaltending, and one of your goaltenders is literally unplayable.
Yeah.
Like mate, I don't know if you could even bank on Grubauer potentially having a bounce back season or
No,
a
it's
slightly
it's
better
kind of
one.
a berry at this point, isn't it?
Yeah,
Um,
well, it is. Like you almost have to just buy him out and just give Matt Murray that backup goaltending and hope that he can give you enough games to get you by. But Joey Decord, I'm not sure that you can trust as your starting goalie. Uh, they've obviously got the likes of Shane Wright and Matty Beniers, who, if they can take a next step, Capo Caco, if he can sort of, you know, continue on some of his good form that he had towards the back end of the last season. But yeah, to me, they don't have a great direction at the moment.
I think they got some good names, but like you said, it's going to take a little bit to retool, especially that goaltending situation, which might take them out of a window because it might take too long to do. But moving on to the St. Louis Blues, and interesting one, we got him a D tier,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
and yeah, I don't know where they're going, like what they got. Risan Piasuda, Bukestad, and that's pretty much it. Like, there's not really much going on there for a team that probably should be going for it. And so
mhm.
I felt very lackluster.
Yeah, I mean, they obviously had that mad run to make the playoffs last season, but like you can't depend on doing that every single season. Um, and I don't see where this team got better. Like I see other teams around them have improved, but they haven't. So,
Yeah,
is this team going to be? I mean, if they get the back end of last season all season, yeah, they might be a very good team, but they're inconsistent.
yeah.
There's
They have an
rumors Kyrie
inconsistent
might be
lineup. That
moved.
I think that's the problem.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm disappointed. I expected a little bit more. I expected them to do something to sort of shake up the lineup and improve, but yeah, that's just us, I guess.
All right, Tampa.
All right, Tampa Bay. I mean, yeah, what do you make out for a team that's sort of shocked a few people last season, um, in the fact that they were the favourites to beat Florida for a lot of people, apparently, in the first round. Um, but they did a lot better than what people thought. Uh, they haven't done too much, but they haven't really needed to. So for me, it's a C, but it's not a bad C. It's just there's not too much that they can or need to do.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Look, they keep making the playoffs, which is great, but they haven't really made the retooling of what they needed to add to get that further step. They were in
Yeah.
really good form coming in, and obviously losing to the Stanley Cup champion, it's nothing to you know look look down
Yeah,
upon.
well, I mean, it shows you how wrong the playoff format is, right? Because, Tampa was pegged to be a pretty powerhouse team in the East, and it comes up against Florida Panthers in the first round.
Yeah. Uh,
Um, but
All
yeah.
right, on to Toronto Maple Leafs. I think any way you put this, there's probably controversy no matter what. Um,
Mm-hmm.
got them in C tier. I personally feel more closer to D tier, just purely because on paper, and honestly probably even on ice and whatnot, they've just gotten worse than what they were last year.
Yep.
Overall, and obviously losing Mana, and everyone's like, oh yeah, they got Roy, or they got something for him, but
Hmm.
you lost a 100-point player for
Yeah.
nothing. Their team really only has like 4 forwards, and even if you make the playoffs, like that, look, maybe Morgan Riley gets moved, something like that happens, but or more things. But yeah, I'm not convinced, and I did not like. I like the Nyes signing. I like the Tavares signing. Obviously, he's shown he loves Toronto,
Hmm.
and that's why it's a C, not a D.
Yeah, I think they made the best out of a bad situation, but they haven't addressed the fact that they need a puck moving defender. And as you said, they lost Mitch Marner. So yeah, I just can't see how it's anything but a C.
Yeah, I think their PK is going to get worse as well, which they haven't
Yeah.
addressed.
All
Uh,
right. On to the mammoth.
yes, the Utah.
It's a mammoth of an off season for the Utah Mammoth. No pun intended. But look, JJ Paterka, I mean, that trade alone, bringing him in, almost, put you at the A to the S tier. And I think the rest of the moves this offseason that they've done basically secures that and get you over the line as an S tier. Signing of Nate Schmidt, Brandon Tanev, re-signing Jack McBain to a reasonably good contract. I just think that these guys are heading in the right direction, um, and we might just see them snag a wild card spot.
Yeah. No, like been high on them for a few years now. They just keep making the right moves to get a little bit better.
Mhm.
Same as Montreal, same as Ottawa in that regard. So yeah, I feel like it's probably the season that they're knocking on the door.
Yep.
All right, moving on to Vancouver. Another interesting one, and just gonna throw them in the S of D tiers because it's just a team that constantly needs to be rebuilding, and they never
Yep.
do. And then the moves they make, like they had one good season, and I feel like there was too much hype on that one good season, and they feel like
Uh-huh.
they can keep doing it. They've re-signed a few players for bigger money. Obviously, keeping Beza was great. Demko gets his pay. I feel like they needed the move on Quinn Hughes while his value is
Hmm.
probably at its highest,
Yep.
because you're probably losing him in either next year or the year after, no matter what.
Hmm.
And yeah, that's why it's a D. Just they didn't really add anything great. They just more re-signings of players they already had, and didn't really make the big decisions that they probably should have made a decade ago and go into a retool
Yeah.
rebuild.
Yeah, I think that's why this annoys me from them, and I agree with the D tier, because if they were in New York Rangers and they had made or the conference final, second round conference final in like back to back years, and then had a bad season, you could understand let's run it back, let's go hard again. But this is a team that has just for decades done the same thing over and over, refused to go through a proper rebuild, and they have one good season after everyone was asking them to tear it down, and then after that good season they go back to the same shit that they've been doing for a decade, and their their idea of that is, yeah, let's double down and just go again. And as you said, potentially risking losing Quinn Hughes for nothing if it doesn't pay off. His value will only go down the less of this $7.8 million contract that he's got. His value is never going to be higher than it is right now.
Yeah,
It's so yeah, to me, it's a poor decision. It's not a terrible off season, but I just think it's the wrong direction for the Canucks to be going. Um,
yeah.
so yeah.
All right, moving on to the Vegas Golden Knights. Obviously, getting the big free agent signing, or I guess trade, if you want to call it. Uh, because of that, into the A tier, they don't really lose anything in regards to the team. They add the firepower in Mitch Marner. The reason why it's not an S, or it was even closer to a B in some regards, is because the Petrangelo situation on how that's
Mhm.
going to be replaced, or how they're going to address that at all, if not at all.
Mhm.
So Yeah, it's a shaky one, isn't it? It's like how much do you value the Mana signing to
Yeah.
losing Petrangelo in a sense?
Well, yeah, I mean, how much is Mitch Marner not a playoff performer? How much is that reality? And how much is that just, that's what he was with the Leafs. Now he's with Vegas, he might be something different. Um, they do have Theodore and Hannafin on their blue line, so they have good players, but having Petrangelo there as well is obviously a huge plus, and I'm not sure really how they replace that. And the rumors are this isn't even going to be an LTIR situation where he comes back for the playoffs. This is he may
Yeah,
well and
it's
truly be
it's
done for the
it's it,
season. So
well, it's career ending, not even season ending. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. So yeah, I don't know. I like obviously Mitch Marner, huge pickup for them, which is why they're in the A tier. But yeah, if they address the Petrangelo situation and go and get a replacement for him, then they probably do move to S tier. But at the moment, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Alrighty,
All right.
Winnipeg Jets, probably the team that was doing the best last year, and did pretty well going into the playoffs. So then spun around. I got them a C tier. What do you think of that one?
Yeah, yeah. Look, I agree with you, man. They didn't do overly too much. They haven't really made any trades. They haven't really uh, picked up any sort of too crazy free agents. They pick up Jonathan Tays, which
Yes.
it's kind of why they're in this C tier, right? Because the Tays signing could be massive, or it could be nothing.
Yeah.
They
It,
pick up
it's
Gustav
almost
Nyquist.
B tier just for that, but
Well, I mean, if Jonathan Tays ends up being a stud, then yeah, it probably does go into a
mm,
B or an A tier if he can find his, you know, form from 8 years ago. But
it's
that's
a
the big question about it. It's also going to depend on how much they sign Vladi for and Morgan Barron and Sandberg Kapari. They've still got them to sign. So yeah, at the moment it's not terrible, but at the same time they were the President Trophy winners last year. Did they really have to do much? So yeah, I don't
yeah,
think it's a terrible C. It could again be an A depending on the performance of Tays, but
yeah.
for
Look, they
me, yeah.
add Nyquist and Taves, and the big one is obviously there's Taves because it's the black horse, the big
Mhm.
question mark on what he can do. So, but I still think they could have been able to add a little bit more to really bolster that playoff. Maybe just a pure playoff player like a Corey Perry or something. Um,
Yeah.
but on to the final and last team, the Washington Capitals, and got
Mm.
them in C tier.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this is just a team that didn't do anything, and I feel like you pretty much got 1 year left with the OV thing, going for the Stanley Cup. Maybe 2 years if you're really lucky, and they didn't
Mhm.
really go out gung ho, getting those 1 year contracts that were in the free agency or trading for them. And I feel like that's
Yeah.
why they're in the C tier. But they are also a really good team that they didn't lose from that. So it wasn't a
Mm.
D. Yeah.
Yeah, like they didn't need to do a huge amount. They were second in the standings last year, so they didn't need to
Yeah.
do a huge amount. But yeah, as you said, they're probably in their final year of being able to really push, especially in the Ovi situation as well. So, would you have liked to have seen a little bit more? Yes. Um, but again, like this is a team that finished second in the standings. They haven't gotten any worse. They re-signed a couple of players. But I guess, you look at it and go, they've got cap space left. Could they have potentially gone and gotten a little bit more? Yes. Maybe they'll hold that until deadline. Maybe they're looking at it and going, we know we'll make the playoffs. And then we'll go and spend that cap at the deadline to improve for the playoffs. But yeah, I can't you can't give it any more than a C, and you can't give it a D because
Yeah,
I,
they
they
kept
didn't
most
get
of the teams. Yeah,
and they didn't get worse. So yeah,
yeah, it's pretty much just a passing grade. But yeah, let us know what you think of the rankings so far. Obviously, this is as of moment. Trades and signings and whatnot can happen going
yeah.
forward. And yeah, let us know what you think of your team and where you would have had them compared to us. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below. And till next time, we'll catch you guys.
See you later, guys. Bye.